Tigers remain a 2.5-point favorite on the road this weekend at Mississippi State. The total on that game is also remaining at 56. If you remember yesterday, Rafael Esparza was with us, and he said to watch out for that line. It should move back up to 3 by the end of the week. So that's where you stand from a gambling aspect. Now, if you're looking to bet that game, here's some things you might want to keep an eye on. And like we've started this show off plenty with already, Mario, we're once again going to talk about LSU's offensive line, because when Coach O was on the SEC Coaches teleconference today, this is going to be number 7, Casey, he talked about the offensive line and some of the problems that they're still having, and it focuses kind of on one position.
We haven't gelled yet like we want to. Those guys are trying. It seems like one day we have this guy in, one day we have that guy in. As you know, that line's got to gel and play together. We still haven't found a left tackle. I don't know if Cam Wire hadn't practiced yet. Is going to be ready to play, so we're trying out some of the young guys. We put them in last week. They didn't play very well. They know it. They weren't ready to play. And so we have to find a left tackle until we get guys practicing all day, all week together. This is going to be an ongoing process.
And then, so obviously, you heard a lot about left tackle there. We still don't know our left tackle. Cam Wires, the status there is up in the air. It doesn't really sound like he's going to play, listening to Coach O there. So where do you go? Well, Coach O was asked that. This is number 9, if we could, Casey. He was basically asked, is it an open competition at left tackle right now?
Yes, and no doubt. And in fact, that's exactly what I walked in the offensive line room and told him, who's going to be our left tackle? I don't know. We got to compete. And whoever practices better this week is going to play. So we got guys that are fighting for it.
Oh, man. Going into SEC play with an open competition at left tackle. That is not a scenario you want to find yourself in, is it? But what I will say is I'm really happy they at least have Deculus and Hines back. They definitely made an impact in the game last week, and I pray to God that those two guys stay healthy for the duration of this game. And we should point out that rushing the passer, Mississippi State has not been great. They only have 6 sacks on the season as a team, which is 13th in the SEC. Only one team has less sacks, which is Vanderbilt. They have 1 sack on the season as a team, which is amazing. But Mississippi State still has the number 1 third down defense in the SEC. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. And they're third against the run at 74 yards per game that they're giving up rushing the ball. So it's unfortunate, the situation at left tackle, but at least you still have Deculus. At least you still have Hines. And as I was telling you before the show, man, I think Max is a little bit better equipped to handle all this pressure that he's inevitably going to get than he was at the beginning of the season.
And I think they've tailored the offense a little bit more around. At least you saw it last week. And they're gonna try to do some of the same things. Tempo, Keishon Butte in the slot, getting the ball out quick, things like that, to keep getting ahead of the chains, passing, being an extension of the run game, and all of that, yes, for sure. But you still do have to shore up that spot. And I know you could also say maybe it's a good thing that technically that's not Max's blind side, because he's a left-handed quarterback. But it is still a position where a lot of the times the tackle you play out on an island. So you have to have somebody who's strong in that position. And right now, they don't know where they're going there. Dare Rosenthal was a bigger loss than we were all willing to admit in the moment. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. And I'm just curious where they go. I think Anthony Bradford could be somebody interesting to watch here, Mario, maybe. That's somebody Coach O's had a lot of high praise for, calling him the best offensive lineman on the team in the past. It hasn't materialized when he's gotten out there on the field, and they've played him in a lot of different spots. Right tackle, right guard. Even when Dare Rosenthal left, he was getting some snaps at left tackle, but it wasn't necessarily a great fit, and they moved him back to guard. Might you see him go back there? Because when you had Charles Turner there, he's a backup center. He's not a tackle. That did not work well. You saw Garrett Dellinger there at the end of the game last week. That wasn't necessarily visually appealing at either. And it's tough, man, for a true freshman to come in and play left tackle in the SEC, play tackle in general in the SEC. That's a challenge. Do they go back to Xavier Hill? I don't know. He started the last 2 weeks, and you heard Coach O in that soundbite talk about it wasn't good. We started young guys last week, and it wasn't good.
Yeah, the situation, again, is not ideal at all. But all those guys, Bradford, Turner, those guys at the end of the day are playing out of their original position.
They are.
I know that Dellinger is a freshman, but hopefully he gained something from those reps. And I believe he's the highest recruited player, or was the highest heralded recruit on the LSU offensive line, besides maybe Cardell Thomas, who has played awfully since he got on campus. So hopefully those reps help Dellinger out. And I know we're very hesitant to start a freshman, but that might be LSU's best option. And I believe he went in the game last week before Anthony Bradford did. So I take that for what it's worth. again, he's young, but he has at least gotten some reps. And eventually, LSU is going to need somebody to step up here. And we've seen freshmen step up in those spots before in recent years. I remember in 2017, going into the Swamp, you had a young Sadiq Charles and a young who was the other one? Ed Ingram. Ed Ingram was the other one.
Yeah.
And those guys played really well, thrown into the fire as freshmen. So we've seen it done before. Again, you're playing a team that doesn't have the strongest pass rush in the world if we're just looking at the numbers. And it's not an ideal situation for LSU to be in again, but we've talked about it on this show, man. If you're LSU's coaches, you have to do your job and find a way to mask these deficiencies.
You weren't playing the strongest team, the strongest pass rushing team in the world, but, I mean, look, McNeese came in here and got pressure on LSU. Now, you were missing offensive linemen then, so that is a caveat to throw in there, but you're also going to see more of a mixing up looks and motions and stunts and things of that to try to confuse the LSU offensive line for Mississippi State. I know we talked a lot about it maybe being kind of similar potentially to UCLA. Always look, man, if you're going to place a wager on a game, offensive line's a good place to pay attention to because that can really, really impact the point spread on a football game. And LSU continues to have problems there. Now, the other thing everyone's paying attention to into this game, Mario, is obviously how LSU's defense covers Mississippi State's wide receivers because, as we all know, that didn't go very well last year. Last year, you were facing KJ Costello. This year, you'll be facing Will Rogers at quarterback. And Coach O this morning on the SEC Coaches Teleconference did give his thoughts on the Mississippi State signal caller.
He has a quick release. He's very accurate. He has a good feel for the offense. 75% completion ratio. That's unbelievable. 1,000 yards passing 3 games. They got him a good quarterback. But you know what? Coach Leach is such a good teacher. They got good routes. He knows how to attack protections. He knows how to attack coverages. He has great protection. I think Coach Leach is a great coach, and it shows he has a new quarterback. He's having a lot of success.
You heard him mention the 1,000 yards, the 75% completion percentage. It's been a lot of dink and dunk, though. Only 9 deep balls, shots taken, right? 9 passes of 30 yards or more down the field for Mississippi State this season. LSU is going to have another really good tackling day Saturday in order to combat that. And you know they're going to be trying to get the ball out quick to offset LSU's pass rush, which is number 1 in the country right now in sacks. So expect a lot of quick throws from Will Rogers. It's been something they've done all year, and it just kind of plays into what Mike Leach and how they want to neutralize the strongest part of LSU's defense right now, the defensive line.
Yeah, and I think that might be advantage LSU, man. I think LSU's defense has really done a good job flying to the ball, not just the defensive line, but the linebackers as well. And maybe they still have some stuff that they need to improve on in terms of communication and adjusting, but I really like what I've seen out of Baskerville and out of Clark the last couple of games, especially against Central Michigan. And then obviously, man, the common denominator, the one thing that LSU has this year on defense, obviously, that it did not have last year in this meeting is Derek Stingley. And Derek Stingley, I know in the first game went viral on that horrible tackle against the UCLA receiver, but he has been pretty good in the open field tackling the last couple of games. He forces that fumble against Central Michigan, and that's very relevant because, as you said, Mississippi State is going to dink and dunk, and they're going to do it a lot. We had Matt Wyatt on Off the Bench this morning, Mississippi State Radio Network, and he was talking to us about a 17-play drive that ended in a field goal for Mississippi State. And we know what that is. We know what this offense is, and it's reflected in the numbers because Mississippi State is the only team in the SEC that's running the ball right now worse than LSU is at 45 rushing yards per game. But that's also a product of the air raid, obviously. And they do have the number 1 pass offense in the SEC. You mentioned Will Rogers, who's going for 361 passing yards per game. And I'm very curious to see how Derek Stingley's presence in this game will affect the game versus last year. And I want to see how or if Mike Leach shows any hesitancy in attacking Derek Stingley's side of the field.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Leach is such a good schemer, man. I just think I always kind of went back and forth last year on if it really would have mattered had LSU had Derek Stingley. When you give up as much as they did, it felt like they were going to be able to get it regardless. I don't know if that's really necessarily the case this year. Stingley absolutely adds something to it because he's the best cover cornerback in college football. But there's going to be a way to go around him. He's only been targeted 3 times so far this year. I mean, teams have schemed around him, and LSU's the past defense has had its struggles, but it's mainly because of missed assignments. So, I mean, that's ultimately what you have to correct. Lastly, before we get to break, there is one glaring issue that Mississippi State has, and man, this would actually probably kind of fire Mississippi State fans up just because of the officiating in the last game. But Mississippi State has a penalty problem. 29 penalties for 215 yards. That's in 3 games, an average of 9 penalties for 71 yards per game. They also seem to come at an inopportune time. I point that out because that can absolutely sway and turn the game, especially when you consider LSU, outside of last week versus Central Michigan. They really haven't been a problem for the Tigers. Penalties, that is, only 10 for 92 yards in 3 games. So LSU absolutely the more disciplined of the 2 football teams. Just kind of wanted to throw that out, see how that impacts the game on Saturday.
Don't let those cowbells get to you, man.
Don't let them get to you.
You and I both think that that's kind of an underrated venue to play at. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but
I have not. I've never been to Starkville in general. I'd like to go, but I'd like to go for baseball. I have no desire to go there for football.
Got you. I might have told you this before off mic, not on this show, but I made one trip there, 2015. I was covering the game for the Daily Reveille student newspaper here at LSU, and I was very impressed with the atmosphere, man. It was a lot louder than I thought it would be, and that was with LSU bringing a lot of people. There was a fair contingent of LSU fans there, but that was Dak Prescott's senior year, and honestly, Mississippi State should have won that game. I remember they drove on LSU. He hit a couple of passes to Darunye Wilson, who beat Tolliver a couple of times in a row. They get in field goal range. Place is going nuts, but if I remember correctly, then they had multiple penalties to push them back. They missed the field goal in the end, but LSU wins. But it was a great atmosphere that day, and Anthony Jennings, or Brandon Harris, I should say, and LSU was definitely rattled at some point. So we'll see if Max Johnson and this current edition of the Tigers can avoid that happening.
And hopefully, the crowd won't be as rowdy at 11 a.m. That's one of the, I guess you could say, benefits of an 11 a.m. kickoff is normally it's tough. LSU couldn't sell out Tiger Stadium in 2019 for an 11 a.m. kickoff. Okay, so I mean it's just tough to get people out there that early in the morning. So hopefully that offsets that a little bit as well. But well, man, look, it's already Wednesday. The game is fast approaching. 11 a.m. Saturday, LSU at Mississippi State to open the conference slate. Tigers steady at a 2.5-point favorite on the road with the total still holding at 56.